something quite atrocious, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
In the spring of 1961, in a rehearsal room on the Disney lot in Burbank, someone switched on a tape recorder. Over the days that followed, it captured hour after hour of argument between Walt Disney's songwriters, his screenwriter, and the woman who had written the book they were adapting. Her name was Pamela Travers. She did not want the film made the way they were making it, and she said so, line by line, on the record. Roughly 39 hours of those conversations went into the Disney archive, and for decades, almost nobody outside the company heard a word of them. Mary Poppins went on to win 5 Academy Awards. The woman who created the character spent the rest of her life trying to undo parts of it. Number 1. The 20-year chase for the rights. Mary Poppins was published in 1934. It was written by an Australian-born author living in London who had been born Helen Linden Goff and who wrote under the name Pamela Travers. The book sold, a series followed, and Walt Disney wanted it almost immediately. Accounts of exactly when he first noticed it differ. Some place it in the late 1930s, when his own daughter was reading it, others in the mid-1940s. What is not disputed is how long the pursuit took. Disney chased those rights for roughly 2 decades, and for roughly 2 decades, the answer was no. Travers did not trust what Hollywood would do to her character, and she was specific about why. She had watched the studio turn folk tales into cartoons. Mary Poppins, as she had written her, was not sweet. She was sharp, vain, unexplained, and slightly frightening. The version Travers feared was a soft one. She finally agreed in 1961, and she did not agree cheaply. The contract reportedly gave her a share of the film's gross receipts, and far more unusually for the period, a right to be consulted on the script. That single clause is the reason the tape recorder was running. It is worth understanding what she was protecting. The Mary Poppins of the books arrives, imposes order, refuses to explain herself, and leaves. She is not warm. Travers had built a character defined by withholding, and she was being asked to hand it to the most successful maker of reassuring stories in the world. Number 2, 39 hours on tape. In the spring of 1961, Travers traveled to California for a run of story conferences with the film's composers, Richard and Robert Sherman, and its screenwriter, Don DeGrady. The sessions were recorded. Accounts of whose idea that was vary, but the outcome is clear enough. Travers wanted a record of what she had objected to, and she got one. Roughly 39 hours of those recordings survive inside the Disney archive. What is on them is not a polite creative conversation. It is a line-by-line defense. She questions individual words in the lyrics. She objects to characterization. She pushes back on the reworking of the mother into a suffragette. She reportedly objects to the color red appearing in Mary's costume. She questions the casting. And again, she returns to one thing above all others, which we will come to in a moment. The recordings sat in the archive for decades. Excerpts were eventually published and played publicly most widely in the years around 2013, when Disney released its own dramatized film about these same meetings, which means the studio's version of the argument reached the public before the argument itself did. Number 3, the argument she lost. The thing Travers returned to, more than casting, more than costume, more than lyrics, was animation. She did not want any. No cartoon sequences, no drawn characters. Her position was consistent from the story meetings onward. The film could be a musical, it could take liberties, but it could not become a cartoon. Disney kept the animation anyway. What survives in the finished film is the sequence inside the chalk pavement drawing live actors moving through a painted world with animated animals around them. It is one of the most technically celebrated things in the picture, and it is precisely what she had asked them not to do. This is where the clone channels invent a banned scene. There was none. Nothing was censored, nothing was seized, and nothing was destroyed. What actually happened is smaller and stranger. An author with a consultation clause was overruled on the single point she cared most about, and the record of her being overruled was kept on tape and then filed away. She reportedly raised it again at the premiere itself, 3 years later, and asked for the animation to be removed. Disney's reply is widely reported, and always in paraphrase, the ship he told her had already sailed. Number 4. The songs that were never filmed. Richard and Robert Sherman did not write 14 songs for Mary Poppins. By their own account, they wrote well over 30. What reached the screen was a fraction of the work, and the rest was left behind at various stages, some abandoned on paper, some carried far enough to be recorded as demonstration tracks with the composers themselves at the piano. Among the titles that did not make it, the Chimpanzoo, a comic number written for the sequence inside the chalk drawing, in which the animals at the zoo come to watch the humans. Practically Perfect, an early attempt at introducing the character. The Right Side, a lullaby. West Wind, a short and unusually melancholy piece written for Mary herself. Admiral Boom. Mary Poppins Melody. Say clearly what these are, and what they are not. None of them was filmed. There is no vault of deleted Mary Poppins sequences, because these songs were dropped before a camera was ever involved. What exists is audio. The Chimpanzoo in particular stayed effectively unheard by the public for around 4 decades, until Richard Sherman performed it for the anniversary home video release. A song written for a film in 1963 and finally heard by an audience in the 2000s. Some of that discarded material was very good, which is why so much of it kept resurfacing. Pieces written and abandoned during this production turned up later in other Disney projects, in stage versions, and on anniversary releases decades after the fact. The Sherman Brothers wrote for this film across roughly 2 years, and the finished picture represents the surviving third of that work. The rest is not lost. It is simply unfilmed, sitting in recordings and on paper, and most of it has now been heard by an audience, just not the audience it was written for. Number 5. The melody that escaped into another film. One of the cut songs did not stay cut. Among the pieces written for Mary Poppins and dropped was a number called The Land of Sand, a slow, coiling, faintly hypnotic melody. It did not fit the film. It was set aside. 3 years later, the same songwriters were working on another Disney feature, The Jungle Book, released in 1967. The melody they had written for Mary Poppins was reworked, given new lyrics, and handed to a snake. It became Trust in Me, the song Kaa uses to hypnotize Mowgli. This is not a rumor or a fan theory. The songwriters describe the reuse themselves, and it is the most literal missing frame in this entire story. A piece of Mary Poppins that was removed from Mary Poppins and is still in circulation today, playing in a completely different film, sung by a completely different character, recognized by millions of people who have no idea where it came from. Number 6. The song Walt Disney asked for on Fridays. Of everything the Sherman Brothers wrote for this film, one song mattered to Walt Disney more than the rest, and it was not the famous one. It was Feed the Birds, the quiet, minor key piece about the bird woman on the cathedral steps, tuppence a bag. It is the emotional center of the film, and it is almost the only moment in it that stands completely still. Richard Sherman told the story many times, and it is his account rather than documentary record, so take it as he told it. On Friday afternoons, Disney would call him into the office at the end of the week. He would stand at the window looking out across the lot, and he would say, "Play it." Sherman would sit down at the piano and play Feed the Birds, and neither of them would say much about it. Disney died in December 1966, 2 years after the film's release. Sherman has said that the song was, in Disney's own view, what the picture was actually about, not the umbrella, not the nonsense word, but a woman on the steps of a cathedral whom everybody walks past. Number 7. The word that went to court. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. 34 letters written by the Sherman Brothers, and the reason the film has a place in every dictionary of invented English. What is far less well known is that the word ended up in a courtroom. In the mid-1960s, 2 songwriters brought a copyright action, claiming the word had been taken from a song of theirs published years earlier. In the late 1940s, with a differently spelled but recognizably similar title. The damages sought were reported at around $12 million, an enormous figure for the period. The case did not succeed. The court was presented with evidence that variants of the word had been in circulation well before either song existed, reportedly going back to the 1930s, in playground use and in print. On that basis, the claim failed. The Sherman Brothers, for their part, always said the same thing about where it came from. A summer camp memory of children inventing long nonsense words decades before either of them worked for Walt Disney. Number 8. The actress the other studio turned down. Julie Andrews had never appeared in a feature film before Mary Poppins. She was a stage performer, and she had played Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady on Broadway for years. When Warner Brothers came to film My Fair Lady, they did not cast her. They cast Audrey Hepburn, who was a proven film star, and Andrews was left without the role she had made famous. Disney cast her instead. Both films were released in 1964, within weeks of each other. At the Academy Awards the following spring, Julie Andrews won Best Actress for Mary Poppins. Audrey Hepburn was not nominated for My Fair Lady, and one widely cited reason is that Hepburn's singing had been dubbed by another performer, an arrangement this channel has covered before. My Fair Lady took Best Picture. Andrews took the award for acting. At the Golden Globes, she is widely reported to have thanked the head of Warner Brothers for making it possible a line delivered with a straight face and understood by everyone in the room. The symmetry of that year is almost too neat to be true. Two enormous musicals, released within weeks of each other, both adapted from stage productions, both nominated heavily. One of them starred the woman who had originated the role on Broadway. The other starred a film actress in a part that had been made famous by somebody else. And the awards went the way almost nobody predicted when the casting was announced. Mary Poppins was Julie Andrews' first film. She has said since that she owed the entire career that followed to being turned down for the role she thought was hers. Number 9. The second role hidden in the credits. Number 9. Dick Van Dyke plays Bert, the chimney sweep. He also plays somebody else, and most people who have watched the film many times have never noticed. Mr. Dawes Sr., the ancient bank chairman, bent, white-haired, barely able to stand, is Van Dyke, buried under heavy prosthetic makeup. He was in his late 30s at the time. The credit is hidden in plain sight. In the end titles, the role is attributed to a performer named Navkid Keed. The letters then rearrange themselves on screen to spell Dick Van Dyke. Van Dyke has said he asked for the part himself, and that he was told he could have it on the condition that he made a donation to the art school Walt Disney had founded, a figure he has put at around $4,000. And then there is the other thing about his performance, the thing he has spent 60 years apologizing for. His Cockney accent is regularly described as one of the least convincing in cinema history. Van Dyke has never defended it. He has said repeatedly that the dialect coach assigned to him was Irish. Number 10. The premiere she almost did not attend. The film premiered at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood on the 27th of August, 1964. Pamela Travers was there. According to her biographer, she very nearly was not. She had not been sent an invitation and reportedly had to secure one through a Disney executive rather than being invited as the author of the source material. What happened in the auditorium has been told many ways. Travers cried during the screening. That much is agreed. Why she cried is not, and this is exactly the point where the clone channels stop being careful. Some accounts describe tears of anger at the animation. Others describe her being genuinely moved. Her own later statements were mixed. She praised individual elements. She praised Julie Andrews, and she remained unmovable about the cartoon sequence for the rest of her life. Treat the tears as documented and their cause as disputed, because that is what the record supports. What is certain is what she did afterwards, and it is the most consequential decision in this entire story. Number 11. The veto that held for 54 years. Pamela Travers never allowed Disney to make another Mary Poppins film in her lifetime. She had granted rights to one picture and she declined to grant more, and she held that position for over 30 years, through the rest of the 1960s, the 70s, the 80s, and into the 90s. She died in 1996 at 96 years old. Her conditions outlived her. When a stage adaptation was finally negotiated, the terms she had insisted on were reportedly extraordinarily specific: British-born writers only, and no involvement from anyone who had worked on the 1964 film. The stage musical opened in London in 2004, using the Sherman Brothers songs alongside new material by other writers, under exactly those constraints. A second film did not arrive until 2018, 54 years after the first. And so the final missing frame is not a reel of film at all. It is 54 years of films that were never made, held back by one clause in one contract signed by an author who had spent 20 years refusing to sign anything, and who then spent the rest of her life defending the one concession she made. Mary Poppins won 5 Academy Awards and remains one of the most watched films ever made, and everything that is missing from it went missing quietly. Songs written and recorded and dropped before a camera ever turned, a melody that walked out of this film and into another one, and 39 hours of an author arguing her case into a tape recorder while a studio built the film she had asked them not to build. No censor was involved, nothing was burned. It was simply overruled, filed, and left there. If you want more of the lost cuts, the withheld versions, and the hidden truths behind the films that changed cinema, subscribe to the channel.